It's vegan recipes with Pat and Emily.
Welcome to my kitchen. Today what I'm going to make is an oatmeal style cookie, but there's absolutely no flour in it. The base is ground up nuts. This cookie could also be used for a breakfast cookie. It's that nutritious for you. So what we start with is you get 2 cups of walnuts or pecans and you put them in your food processor, and you want them to be about this consistency. And one thing I want to tell you is you can alter some recipes. This recipe I got out of the newspaper. I would give credit if I knew where to give credit to, but I've altered it a little bit. So it called for pecans. I used walnuts. You would want a soft type of nut for that. To that I'm adding baking powder, cornstarch, and salt. And I always like to mix my dry ingredients together first. So the nuts are replacing flour, which would be like a dry ingredient. When you do this, you're going to get all of that incorporated into that. The next thing is you stir in rolled oats. And in this case, it's not like the quick oats. I do think you could use quick oats. But with the roll oats, you'll see when they're baked, it gives the cookie some dimension, and it looks really nice that way. The next thing that you put into it is maple syrup, vanilla, and I'm going to stir my wet ingredients together. The original recipe called for oil, and I substitute applesauce. This happens to be unsweetened applesauce, and it happens to be homemade, but you really could use anything that you purchased in the store as well. So I'm going to stir those ingredients up also. Get those mixed well. And stir it up. It smells great. That maple syrup and vanilla and apple just smell wonderful together. Since this cookie doesn't have any egg in it, you could actually eat the cookie dough, and it is pretty tasty. This is one of those doughs I think that you could roll in balls and refrigerate and just eat them like that. Next, I'm putting in half a cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips. These are vegan, and I have read a lot of various packages. Most of the semi-sweet are vegan, and this is dried cherries. Again, you could use a different fruit, but the cherries and those chocolate chips taste great together. So I'm going to just keep mixing it. You could chop up the cherries. These particular cherries weren't as large as some of the dried cherries that I have bought in the past, so I didn't chop them. And this might be one of those doughs I'm just going to have to get my hands dirty with. I think I will. I want to make sure everything's incorporated together. I'll just get one hand dirty. I want to break up those cherries. I want the dough to come together like a dough. And keep in mind, when you are grinding up the nuts, whatever kind you use, don't grind them so much in your food processor that they become like a butter. You definitely don't want that. Let's see, can you roll this into a ball? You could actually roll it into a ball, and it could just be a little freezer or refrigerator cookie that you pop out. I'll let you know how it tastes. That's awesome. That's great. I'm going to rinse my hands off so I can actually shape the cookies. I would bake these on silicone sheets, parchment paper, or these gold mats. I don't have 2 silicone sheets, or I would use those. This scoop is about 1.5 inches wide. You could make them a little smaller. I've taken these cookies to work, and they are definitely a popular cookie there. By using the scoop, it helps me make the cookies about the same size, and then when you're baking them, that also gives you consistency. I'm going to stop the video right now and get a smaller scoop. I want to make 2-size cookies. And this size cookie would probably turn into more of a breakfast size cookie. This scoop is a little bit over an inch, probably an inch and a quarter, and this scoop is probably 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to bake both sizes so you can see what size you might like to make. The oven is preheated at 325. Which is lower than most cookies bake at. I believe that's because this has nuts in, we don't want it to burn, and because it's not the traditional cookie with butter and flour, they bake a little bit differently. After I'm done scooping these cookies, I will flatten them a little bit. You'll see that in a moment. And I think you're going to wish you are here when they come out of the oven. Okay, this little bit of extra dough I'll bake on a different cookie sheet, or I will roll it into balls and just freeze them. So we're going to flatten these a little bit. You can see I'm pushing the dough together. If you find your hands are sticking to the dough too much, which mine are, just wet them a little bit. And somehow that helps them not stick to your hand as much. I'm going to move over to this tray, and we will be putting them into the oven. So we will be back as soon as they're baked. The cookies are baked. They have cooled on a cooling rack. We've put them in a basket. But I wanted to tell you something. I measured the cookie scoops, and for these small cookies, the cookie scoop was actually 1 inch, and these cookies baked 15 minutes. The medium-sized cookies, the scoop was actually 1.5 inches, and they baked 20 minutes. And for these larger cookies, the scoop was 1 3/4 inches, and they baked 25 minutes. It's important that when you are baking these particular cookies, let them cool on the cookie sheet for a few minutes before putting them on the cooling rack so that they actually firm up. So now for the taste test. I was going to take a little one and just pop it in my mouth, but I want you to see the texture of the cookie. And now I'll taste it. Really pleasant, so mellow, so enjoyable. We'll have the recipe below, and of course, as always, we appreciate you subscribing and sharing. Thanks, and God bless you.
Up next come the outtakes.
I'll have the recipe. Did a few things I made. No, let's start.